So we talked about embeddings and we saw when we basically use embeddings. The next concept we are going to talk about is plugins. So when we talk about plugins, you can use plugins along with Copilot. So Copilot, I told you, it is an AI chatbot with Microsoft have created. So what Microsoft found is like there is an opportunity here where I can take these large language models and I can create a chatbot where people can ask questions. The model is going to give a response and I can attach this chat to each of the flagship product I have got. So now you have the ability to add Copilot to all the Office products like Word, Excel, PowerPoint. You have Copilot in Windows 11. You have Copilot in your Power Platform products, Dynamics 365, and so on. So basically, it's nothing but you click on Copilot, it will be an icon in the ribbon, which opens a chat interface, and you can ask it. So for instance, in Word, if you want to ask Copilot to write a newsletter, it will write the newsletter straight away using the Copilot plugin. Of course, it comes with a license cost. So the Copilot you have to purchase for M365 and it costs you around like a 360 USD per year per user. But the opportunities that you get as part of Copilot is vast. So Microsoft Copilot, which they have embedded in their flagship products, will give you help around that product. Like if I want to create presentation, really great presentations in PowerPoint, I can use Copilot for PowerPoint. If I want to do data analysis on data in Excel, I can use Copilot for Excel. But sometimes you want to use Copilot to get information from your third party application. So for instance, I may have an HR application and I may have some policies in my HR application, which if someone is asking Copilot a question, I want that to provide responses from my HR application. So how do I go about doing that? And that's where plugins come into picture. So what are plugins? So you can actually create plugins and you can add custom functionality to Copilot with the help of plugins. So what you can do is like a plugin will enable you Copilot experience to interact with your own APIs. So sometimes these HR systems, it comes with its own API, right? And you can just create a plugin of that using that API. And then you can add that, give that plugin to Copilot and then from Copilot, you will be able to access that information. But if you want to use the plugin, then there are some guidelines that you have to follow with your API. So let us look at what they are. So key things to note first before we jump on to the architecture of the plugin is if you want to augment AI systems like Copilot to access your own organization APIs, you will use plugins. If you want to retrieve useful information or perform new computations or safely act on the user behalf, you can use plugins in all of these scenarios. So this is a quick architecture of the plugin. So normally when you are writing a plugin, make sure that the plugin is written based on the Open API format. So Open API standard is a standard format. And so basically it is an API specification that you have to follow. And that makes sure that your API is written using the Open API format. The second thing is you need to have an API which is developed using Open API format. You have to have an API specification or what we call it as the documentation. And the third one is you have to create a plugin manifest. It is a JSON file which is used by Copilot to know when and how to use the plugins. So the API specification, the plugin manifest, they all needs to be hosted on your own server, right? How does this really work, right? If you ask Copilot a question, so the user asks Copilot a question and Copilot is going to go and check, I don't have the answer for this question. Do I have any APIs that are registered with me that can answer this question? So if it is your plugin API, then Copilot will call your plugin API. It will get the response from your plugin API, and then it is going to give the response back to the user in a natural language text. So that's how it works. So the three important pieces of information you want to have with the plugin is the API that has been developed should be developed using the Open API format. You need to have a proper API documentation or specification. And the third one, you need to generate what we call it as the plugin manifest file, which is basically a JSON file. That is what Copilot will use to know when and how to use your plugin. So this is just to give you a little bit more elaborate version of how the plugin usage will work. A user asks a question, the Copilot will understand the question, and it is going to go and check, can I use a plugin for help here? If it is yes, then it is going to go and call the plugin, and it is going to send the request to API server. And you may be wondering, the people will be asking a natural language text. Who is going to, but my API will understand only the request in JSON format. Copilot will do the translation because you have given the API specification, right? So Copilot knows how to structure the request, and also it knows how to intercept the response so that the response the user is going to get will be again back in natural language text. So that's how Microsoft Copilot will use the plugins. Just to wrap up, plugins will help you to augment your own APIs with Copilot. And if you want to incorporate your own APIs with Copilot, go ahead and create plugins. To create a proper plugin, you need to have an API that is built using Open API format. The documentation of the API should follow the Open API specification. And finally, you have to create a manifest file for your plugin, which Copilot can use to understand what your plugin is capable for. So this has got a lot of opportunity. Like if you want to open up your organization APIs for a variety of things for Copilot to use, you have to create them as plugins and register them with Copilot, and then you can enhance it.